They say vampires crave silence. But he never realized silence would be the thing that destroyed him. One night, the king complained that her presence was too much. Not knowing she heard every word. Left. It changed. She became someone he couldn't reach. And suddenly, the heartbeat he once called noise became the sound he would do anything to hear again. I love knowing where my listeners are. So before this story unfolds, drop your location in the comments. The Moon Palace of the Vampire Kingdom was a place of silence. Heavy silence. Eternal silence. For centuries, King Kalan had lived in it comfortably, moving like a shadow through halls built for creatures who feared noise and sunlight. Lyra, however, was nothing like them. She was human, warm, bright, full of energy. Where Kalan brought shadows, Lyra brought light, sometimes literally. She liked opening windows. She liked talking. She liked humming while she cleaned. She liked filling the cold castle with small signs of life. She also loved Kalan. She had come into his court months ago believing she could make a difference, believing that her presence was making his immortal life a little less empty. Tonight, she carried a gift for him. A book she had spent months searching for. A rare mortal sea song collection Kalan once mentioned in passing. She clutched it happily as she walked down the dim hallway toward his study. The castle was unusually quiet tonight. Even the torches burned low, as if holding their breath. As she reached his study door, she lifted her hand to knock, but stopped when she heard voices. Kalan's voice. And his two brothers, Lord Theron and Lord Maelor. Lyra smiled at first. She planned to wait until they finished talking. But then Theron said something that made her chest tighten. "She's dedicated," he said with a laugh. "Always around you. Always talking. I don't know how you tolerate a human who breathes so loudly." Maelor snorted. "Her heart probably keeps him awake. Humans are noisy things." Lyra froze. Her fingers trembled around the book. She should leave. She knew she should. Listening to the private conversation of a king was forbidden. But her feet refused to move. And then Kalan spoke. It's not just the heartbeat," he said, sounding tired. "It's everything." Lyra felt her knees weaken. Kalan continued, his voice low and strained. "She's always there. In my rooms. In my library. Following me through the castle. Trying to talk to me, trying to connect. I know she means well, but..." Long pause. Lyra's eyes stung with tears she forced herself not to shed. Kalan finished quietly. "It's suffocating." The book slipped slightly from her grasp, but she held onto it with shaking fingers. Theron burst out laughing. "Suffocating. A human girl. God's brother, I never thought anything could annoy you. But this one, she clings like ivy." Maelor added dryly. "Humans feel too much. They expect us to feel with them. Exhausting creatures." Kalan sighed heavily, a sound Lyra had never heard from him. "Sometimes I just want silence again. The silence I had before she came." Lyra felt her heart crack cleanly in two. Silence. He wanted silence. She had thought her presence brought warmth. She had thought her effort mattered. She had thought he appreciated her. But she was noise, annoyance, burden. The light inside her dimmed. Slowly, carefully, she backed away from the door. Not a sound escaped her. Her breath came in uneven pulls, but she refused to cry here. Not in this hallway. Not where they could come out and see her. She walked back through the corridor that used to feel like a home. Now it felt like a tomb. The castle swallowed her footsteps as she placed the book, the precious gift, on a nearby windowsill. She didn't want him to see her holding it and think she was trying too hard again. As she moved through the halls, tears slid down her cheeks silently. She wiped them away, but more came. She had thought she mattered. Maybe she never did. That night Lyra packed nothing. She slept not in their shared room but in a small cold guest chamber down the hall. Kalan would call her clingy. She would show him exactly how much space she could give. Kalan woke the next evening feeling strangely unsettled. Usually when he opened his eyes, he was greeted with soft light. Lyra always drew the curtains slightly so a thin ray of sunset colored his room. She also always prepared a cup of warm herbal tea that filled the air with a soft, calming scent. But tonight the room was dark. Completely dark. The curtains were tightly closed. No tea. No warmth. No presence. Kaelin frowned. "Lyra," he called out. No answer. He sat up. The sheets on her side of the bed were smooth, untouched. He felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. A small, sharp pinch that made him sit straighter. Where was she? He rose from the bed and moved through the chambers, expecting to find her in the sitting room or by the fire. But each room was empty. He checked the adjoining study. Me. The little balcony she loved. Me. Her laughter didn't echo down the halls. Her scent didn't drift through the air. His frown deepened, irritation mixing with that strange pinch of something. He stepped out into the corridor and found a passing maid. "You," he said. "Where is Lady Lyra?" The maid jumped slightly. I'm not sure, my king." Kaelin didn't like that answer. He didn't like any of this. He moved through the castle like a gust of wind, checking every room until he reached the library. And there she was, sitting high up on a ladder, reading an enormous law book. Her hair was neatly braided, her posture perfect, her expression calm, too calm. She didn't look like the woman who used to jump off ladders to greet him. She didn't look like the woman who smiled with her whole face. Kaelin walked in, expecting her to look up immediately. She didn't. He cleared his throat. Her head lifted slowly, almost lazily, as if she had no real reason to hurry. Then she looked at him with quiet, polite eyes. "Good evening, Your Majesty," she said calmly. "Your Majesty." Not Kaelin. Not even my king. Just cold formality. He stopped at the base of the ladder. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. "Why weren't you in our rooms?" he asked, trying to sound composed. "I rose early," she replied simply. "I wanted to read." No apology. No explanation. No warmth. He waited for her to come down the ladder. He didn't. She looked at him as if he were a stranger interrupting her. He tried again. "I was expecting you for evening tea." Lyra blinked. "I already ate. I had it sent here." Kaelin felt another pinch in his chest, stronger this time. "You usually wait," he said stiffly. Lyra tilted her head, curious but detached. "I didn't want to disturb your routines." Routines. Kaelin stared. Something was different about her. The Lyra he knew was warm, bright, expressive. This Lyra was cool, distant, unreadable. He tried to regain control. "Will you join me for a meal later?" Lyra closed her book, marking her page elegantly. "Thank you for the invitation," she said in a polite tone. "But no. I'm busy studying." She gave a small smile. A smile that wasn't real. A smile that didn't touch her eyes at all. Kaelin felt something in his chest twist unpleasantly. He watched her for a long moment, expecting, hoping she would soften, climb down, reach for him, act like she always did. Instead, she simply waited silently, like she was waiting for him to leave. He cleared his throat again, annoyed at the unfamiliar feeling tightening inside him. "As you wish," he said sharply. He turned and walked out, trying not to slam the door. But as the door clicked behind him, he heard nothing. Not her heartbeat. Not her sigh. Not her footsteps. And for the first time, he recognized the sensation spreading through his chest. She was gone. Not physically but emotionally, she had vanished. He didn't know yet how deeply that loss would cut him. But he would soon. The throne room of the Moon Palace was built to make mortals feel small. The marble floor stretched endlessly, polished to a mirror-like shine. Tall obsidian pillars reached up into shadows, disappearing into a ceiling so high it vanished into darkness. Cold air drifted through the space like a silent warning. King Kaelin sat on his throne, dressed in dark armor that glimmered under torchlight. His expression was calm, unreadable, the expression of a ruler who had existed too long to be easily rattled. But inside he was restless. Ever since his strange encounter with Lyra in the library, something in him felt wrong, unsettled, out of place. His mind kept circling back to the way she looked at him with polite emptiness. It was not the look a consort should give her king. It was not the look she once gave him. And the silence in his chambers last night had been unbearable. The doors at the far end of the throne room opened. The sound echoed through the cavernous space like a falling blade. Lyra entered. She was dressed differently today. Gone were the soft dresses she used to wear, the warm colors, the flowing fabrics. Today she wore a gown of deep blue, with gold embroidery framing her neck and wrists. Her hair was braided tightly, her posture straight, her face serene. She looked like royalty. She walked with calm, measured steps until she stood before him, then curtsied gracefully. "Your Majesty." The title hit Kalen like a blow. He straightened on instinct. "There is no need for such formality, Lyra." "There is," she interrupted softly. Her voice was polite, respectful but distant as the moon. Kalen stared at her. She did not drop her gaze. She did not tremble. She did not smile. Something was very wrong. "What is it you wish to speak to me about?" he asked warily. She folded her hands neatly in front of her. "I have come to request a change in my living arrangements." The court attendants froze. The guards stiffened. The air tightened. Kalen's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Lyra spoke as if reciting a report. "The Queen's wing in the East Tower has been unoccupied for many years. It has spacious study rooms, a private balcony, and better lighting for reading. With your permission, I would like to move my belongings there." Kalen felt a cold ripple move through him. The Queen's wing. It was not a room. It was a world away. A symbolic separation between ruler and consort. A place given to queens who ruled beside the king, not with him. It was where queens lived when marriages turned political. When affection died. When relationships became hollow. His voice dropped lower. "For what purpose do you need such a distance?" Lyra did not flinch. "For the purpose of study, Your Majesty. My duties as your consort require knowledge of our kingdom's laws, history, and alliances. To fulfill that role properly, I need solitude, focus, a dedicated space to work." She met his gaze without blinking. "Our current chambers are distracting." He felt heat rise in his chest, anger or panic he couldn't tell. "What I heard is that you wish to leave my side," he said carefully. Lyra's expression never changed. "I wish to serve this kingdom with efficiency. A separate space will allow me to do that." It was a perfect political answer. It was also a lie. Kalen knew it. She knew he knew it. But she offered him no other explanation. He stared at her for several long seconds, searching her face for emotion, affection, regret, anything. There was nothing. Her heart might have still been beating, but she had closed it to him completely. Finally he said stiffly, "If that is your wish." "It is." "Thank you, Your Majesty." She curtsied again. And without hesitation, she turned and walked away. Kalen watched her disappear through the heavy doors. For the first time in centuries he felt powerless. As if the walls around him were closing in. Within the hour, servants rushed through the halls carrying Lyra's dresses, books, perfumes, and all the little items she'd used to decorate his chambers. Her laughter was gone. Her warmth was gone. Her sunlight was gone. By nightfall, his rooms were exactly as they had been before she arrived. Cold, silent, untouched. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the empty space where she once slept. He had wanted silence. Now silence was all he had. And it was suffocating him. From the moment she moved into the Queen's wing, Lyra changed her routine completely. She woke at dawn instead of dusk. She walked the gardens alone. She spent hours reading in hidden corners of the castle. She trained in archery with the guards. She spoke more with servants and nobles than she ever had before. And she never once went near Kalen's chambers. In the following days, The entire court noticed something had changed. Lady Corinne whispered to her companion, "She seems different, calmer." A guard murmured, "She walks like she owns the place." Even the servants who adored her said, "Lady Lyra shines brighter now." Lyra's transformation was not loud. It was subtle, quiet, dignified. And that was what made it powerful. She no longer hovered around Kalen. She no longer brought him tea. She no longer waited for him in the evenings or followed him to the balcony. She no longer asked him questions or shared her silly mortal stories. She acted like he didn't exist. At first, Kalen tried to ignore it. He spent more hours in the training yard, sparring with his brother Mailer. He held long meetings, drowning himself in work. He pretended the emptiness of his chambers didn't bother him. But every night when he returned to his room, the silence pressed against him like a stone on his chest. The bed felt too big. The room felt too cold. The fire made no warmth. And the absence beside him felt louder than any heartbeat ever had. After a week, he went to find her. He found her in the gardens, kneeling beside a bed of soil, planting small white flowers with the gardeners. She laughed softly at something an elderly gardener said. It was a gentle laugh, warm and pure, one Kalen hadn't heard in weeks. He froze. The sound hit him hard like a spear to the chest. She didn't know he was standing behind her until one of the gardeners bowed. "Your Majesty." Lyra turned slowly. The last time she looked at him, her expression had been polite and empty. Today it was simply calm. "Good evening, Your Majesty," she said. No warmth, no anger, just distance. Kalen felt something twist again, stronger this time. "I didn't know you'd taken up gardening," he said, trying to sound casual. "It is peaceful," she replied, returning her attention to the soil. "And predictable. Plants do not change their minds unexpectedly." The comment was soft, almost invisible, but the meaning hit him like a blow. "Lyra," he said quietly. She lifted her head. "Your Majesty." He stared at her. She didn't flinch. She didn't blush. She didn't look away. There was no love in her eyes. No pain either. It was worse. There was nothing. "I will leave you to your work," he said, stepping back. "Thank you," she replied, her voice polite but utterly detached. He turned and walked away, but only after taking a single step. He realized something painfully obvious. She hadn't bowed. She hadn't tried to follow him. She hadn't watched him leave. She just continued planting flowers, as if he were nobody. That night, Kalen sat alone in his study staring at the fireplace. The shadows in the room felt darker than usual, pressing in around him. Theron entered casually and poured himself a drink. "You look troubled," his brother said. "Is the little mortal still following you everywhere?" Kalen didn't answer. Theron laughed. "Ah, so she finally gave you some peace." Kalen lifted his gaze slowly, cold as a blade. "There is no peace," he said quietly. Theron stopped smiling. A heavy silence filled the room. Kalen looked down at the empty space beside his chair, a space Lyra once filled with warmth, chatter, and her ridiculous need to be close to him. He whispered, "The castle feels colder." Theron frowned. "Colder? The castle has always been cold. Not when she was in it." His brother blinked. "Are you saying you miss her?" Kalen's jaw tightened. But the truth sat heavy in his chest. He missed her laughter. He missed her endless questions. He missed her scent. He missed the way she looked at him like he wasn't a monster. He missed the heartbeat he once called noise. He missed everything. And for the first time in centuries, Kalen felt fear. Fear that he had broken something he could never fix. Fear that she was slipping away for good. Fear that she was learning how to live a life that no longer included him. The king who never feared anything finally understood loss. Real painful loss. Lyra was gone. And the silence she left behind was louder than her living heartbeat had ever been. The Moon Palace grew quieter with each passing night. At first, Kalen tried to convince himself that Lyra's absence was a temporary shift in mood, a mortal sulk that would fade naturally. He told himself she would come back after a day or two, maybe 3. But days turned into a week, then into 2. And each day the silence grew heavier. It was midnight when Kalen entered his chambers after a long council meeting. The large room was dim, lit only by a single candle on his desk. He walked toward the bed out of habit, expecting to find Lyra sitting cross-legged on the sheets, reading or humming or waiting for him like she used to. But the bed was untouched. The pillows perfect, the sheets cold, the air lifeless. He walked slowly around the room, as if hoping she might suddenly appear from behind the curtains or step out of the washroom or emerge from the balcony with her usual bright smile and say, "There you are. I waited for you." But the room only stared back in silence. A silence he had once begged for. He sat down on the edge of the bed, the weight of absence pressing on him like an iron hand around his neck. His eyes drifted over the now empty bedside table. Once it held a small vase with a single flower she picked from the garden, her favorite book, or a cup of herbal tea she brewed for both of them, a tiny charm she believed protected him from nightmares. Gone. He pressed a hand to his chest and inhaled slowly, trying to ground himself. This isn't unbearable, he told himself, but it was. He lay down and closed his eyes, hoping sleep would take him quickly. Didn't. All he heard was the hollow echo of his own breathing. And for the first time he longed for the sound of Lyra's heartbeat, the sound he had mocked, the sound he had complained about. Lump, lump, lump. That soft, steady rhythm that once soothed him without him realizing it. Now he would give anything to hear it again. The next day, he found himself wandering through the castle halls without purpose. He ended up outside the large library, the place where Lyra spent most of her time now. He stepped inside silently. There she was, sitting at a long table, her head bent over a thick atlas, her hair falling over one shoulder. She wore a simple white dress with gold stitching along the sleeves. Several scrolls were spread before her, and she was scribbling notes with sharp focus. She looked beautiful. Kalen lingered near the shelf corner, watching her. She didn't notice him. Or if she did, she pretended not to. Her shoulders didn't tense. Her breath didn't catch. She didn't tilt her head to listen for him. She was completely, painfully unbothered. He stepped closer, his voice low. "Lyra." She looked up calmly. "Yes, Your Majesty. Why have you been avoiding me?" "Avoiding you," she repeated softly. She blinked in mild confusion. "I have not been avoiding you. I have simply been busy." The words felt like daggers dipped in ice. "Busy doing what?" he asked. She gestured gracefully to the books. "Learning, working, preparing for council matters." He furrowed his brows. "You used to include me in your schedules. You used to appreciate silence," she replied gently. Kalen froze. Her tone was soft, not angry and not bitter, and that made her words sting more. Before he could respond, she closed her book. "If you will excuse me, I have an archery lesson." And she walked away, leaving him standing there with his heart twisting in his chest. The guards noticed the change as well. One evening, Kalen overheard 2 of them quietly talking outside the training hall. "Lady Lyra is impressive," one guard whispered. "She picked up archery faster than our last 5 recruits." "The king should be proud," the other murmured. "Proud." Kalen almost laughed. He felt anything but pride. He felt something darker. Tightening jealousy. A gnawing self-hatred. A regret so deep it burned. Lyra was growing stronger each day. Stronger without him, away from him, beyond him. And he had no one to blame but himself. Another night, Kalen tried to work at his desk, but his focus kept slipping. He opened a scroll, read 3 lines, then closed it again. His hands were shaking. He stood abruptly and paced the room. His breath was uneven, too fast, too raw. He searched the shelves for something, anything, to distract himself. And there he saw it. The book Lyra tried to give him. The one she dropped outside his study the night everything changed. A rare sea song collection. He picked it up slowly, his fingers trembling. He opened the cover. Inside, pressed between the first pages, was a wilted flower. His chest constricted painfully. He traced the delicate petals with a single finger. He imagined Lyra's smile when she found the book, her excitement, her hope, her love, and he had crushed it all with careless words. Words she wasn't meant to hear, but she did. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against the shelf. "Lyra," he whispered. His voice broke. And in that moment, the king who once ruled a silent kingdom with iron calm finally understood the curse. He had begged for silence. Now silence was killing him. That night, as he lay alone in his cold room, staring at the moonlight on the floor, one realization pierced through his torment. He did not want peace. He wanted her. But she was already slipping away. And he was helpless to stop it. Winter descended on the Moon Palace. Snow dusted the courtyard stones like powdered silver. Frost clung to the windows. The air chilled enough that even Kaelin felt it through his undead skin. The palace prepared for the grand winter gala, the most anticipated event of the year. Musicians tuned their instruments. Servants hung shimmering banners. Nobles arrived from distant territories. For weeks, the castle buzzed with life. Kaelin felt none of it. His attention was on one thing only: Lyra. On the night of the gala, the ballroom glowed under massive chandeliers. Music filled the air. Laughter echoed across the hall. And Kaelin stood on a raised dais, looking over his people with distant eyes. Until she walked in. Lyra entered the ballroom like a force of nature. She wore a gown of shimmering silver and sapphire, shaped perfectly to her form. Diamonds adorned her hair in a constellation pattern. Her lips were tinted rose gold. Her skin glowed under the candlelight. She looked like the queen this kingdom never had. Nobles gasped softly. Courtiers whispered. Several bowed as she passed. Kaelin's breath caught, an involuntary reaction he had never experienced before. She did not once glance at him. She smiled at the nobles, spoke to the dignitaries, laughed softly at clever remarks. She moved through the ballroom with grace Kaelin had never seen. She was confident, composed, elegant. She was everything he once ignored. She had become everything he now wanted desperately. As the night continued, Kaelin noticed the attention she drew, particularly from one man. Duke Rowan, a young, handsome noble with a reputation for flirtation and ambition. Rowan approached Lyra with a gleaming smile. "You look breathtaking tonight, Lady Lyra," he said, bowing low. "Would you honor me with a dance?" Kaelin stiffened. Lyra smiled politely. "Thank you, my lord. But I am not dancing tonight." "Then perhaps some fresh air," Rowan offered, gesturing toward the balcony. "Snowfall looks beautiful from the terrace." Kaelin's jaw clenched. Hard. He took a step forward. But Lyra declined gently. "That is kind of you, but I have other matters to attend to." Rowan blinked. "Of course. The offer stands." He bowed again and stepped away, though his eyes lingered on her admiringly. Kaelin's hands curled into fists. He wanted to tear the young duke limb from limb. He wanted to pull Lyra away from every noble who dared look at her. He wanted, for the first time, to protect her from more than physical danger. He wanted to protect what was left of his place in her life. But he had no place. Not anymore. Kaelin stepped down from the dais and approached her slowly. He stopped a few feet away, unable to cross the final distance. Lyra sensed him and turned. Her expression remained perfectly neutral. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing her head again. His chest tightened painfully at the title. "Lyra," he said quietly. "You look." She waited. "You look beautiful," he finished softly. "Thank you, Your Majesty." He stared at her, searching for warmth. She offered none. Did you enjoy the evening? He asked, trying again. Yes, she said simply. I had meaningful conversations. Meaningful, he echoed, his voice low. With the ambassador, she clarified. And the northern nobles. And the duke, Kaelin added, unable to control the bitterness in his voice. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, as if surprised by the question. He asked for my company, she said calmly. I declined. Kaelin swallowed. Why? He asked quietly. Lyra met his gaze with cool, composed eyes. Because I don't trust men who only see me when I shine. The words were soft, beautiful, devastating. Kaelin felt them pierce straight through him. Because for so long he hadn't seen her at all. Before he could respond, a noblewoman approached Lyra. My lady, the council wishes to speak with you. Lyra offered a polite nod and walked away. Kaelin watched her go. And in that moment, he knew the truth. He had lost her light. He had lost her trust. He had lost the woman whose heart once beat too loudly for him. And without her, his world had become unbearably quiet. The gala had ended, but Kaelin did not sleep. He wandered the castle halls long after the guests had retired, long after the music faded. His steps echoed across the marble floors, bouncing off the high ceilings and stone arches. He could not erase Lyra's words from his mind. I don't trust men who only see me when I shine. A simple truth wrapped in gentle cruelty. It hit him deeper than any weapon ever had. He ended up walking to the Queen's wing, a place he hadn't dared to approach since she moved there. The doors were carved with ancient symbols, adorned with silver and moonstone. A soft glow seeped from beneath them, warm and alive. He lifted his hand to knock. Nothing came out. Kaelin lowered his hand. He had commanded armies, destroyed enemies, ruled a kingdom for centuries, yet he couldn't find the strength to tap on a simple door. What would he even say? I'm sorry you heard me call you suffocating. I didn't mean it. I miss your heartbeat. I want you back. None of those words felt strong enough. None of them felt worthy of her. He stood there for a long time, painfully aware of how far she'd drifted from him. Inside the room he heard a soft laugh, a small, quiet sound. Lyra. She was laughing with someone. Kaelin stiffened, his mind racing. Who was she with? A servant? A lady in waiting? A guard? The Duke? His heart twisted violently. He reached for the door handle. He was the king. He could enter any room in the palace without knocking. But this wasn't a room he ruled anymore. It was hers, her sanctuary, her space, her distance, and he had no right to cross it. He stepped back slowly. The door opened slightly, just enough to reveal a sliver of warm candlelight. Lyra's voice drifted out. Thank you, Mira. Your company means a lot to me. A young maid replied warmly. You're kind, my lady. I'm happy to help. Kaelin exhaled a breath of relief. Just the maid. Not a duke. Not a rival. But relief did not ease the ache. He turned away, walking back through the halls like a ghost. The next day, Kaelin forced himself into his duties. Council meetings, war strategy updates, trade negotiations, court petitions. But he was only physically present. Mentally he drifted. Every whisper of her name made his chest tighten. Lady Lyra is reviewing the border treaties. Lady Lyra improved the archery team's formations. Lady Lyra spoke with the village headman. She was everywhere, working, growing, rising, and he was nowhere in her world. Late in the afternoon, Kaelin returned to the training yard to clear his mind. He sparred brutally with Mailer, striking harder than necessary. You fight like a man haunted, Mailer muttered, deflecting a blow. Kaelin snarled. Fight properly. You're the one leaking emotions everywhere. Kaelin swung again, the clash of swords echoing. Mailer blocked him easily. You know, Mailer said casually, Lyra has changed more in 2 weeks than most people do in years. She looks like she belongs on that throne. Kaelin's strike faltered. Mailer noticed and smirked. What? Surprised. She carries herself like a queen now. She is not queen, Kaelin said sharply. No, Mailer replied. Not yet. The words hit Kaelin like a blade. Before he could respond, someone called across the yard. My lady, be careful with that arrow. Kaelin's head snapped toward the voice. Lyra was on the far side of the training field, bow in hand, surrounded by guards. She was drawing the bowstring back, her posture elegant, her eyes focused. She released. The arrow struck the target dead center. The guards erupted in cheers. Lyra smiled. A soft, beautiful, genuine smile. Kaelin felt something inside him melt and break at the same time. He watched her move to the next target, calm and confident. She had grown stronger, steadier, wiser. She no longer sought his presence, approval, protection, or affection. She had learned how to survive without him. He stood there for a long time, watching the woman he once took for granted become someone he was now afraid to lose forever. That night, Kaelin sat alone in his chambers again, staring at the moon through the open balcony doors. His shoulders felt heavy. His mind replayed everything. The overheard conversation, her cold distance, her transformation, the Duke's interest, her smile that no longer belonged to him. He finally whispered into the night, I want you back. But the wind carried the words away. And Lyra was too far to hear them. 3 weeks had passed since their separation. 3 long, suffocating weeks. Kaelin found himself drifting toward the Queen's wing again. He didn't knock. He didn't enter. He simply stood there, a silent shadow outside her door. Tonight, however, the door opened unexpectedly. Lyra stepped out. She wore a simple dark green dress, her hair braided loosely, her eyes soft with fatigue. She froze when she saw him, just for a heartbeat, then she straightened, her face slipping into polite neutrality. Your Majesty. Lyra. They stared at each other for a moment that felt like a lifetime. Finally, she asked quietly, Did you need anything? Kaelin swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. Yes, he said. Lyra blinked. She had expected him to say no. She had expected him to leave. She had expected anything except honesty. I need to speak with you, Kaelin continued. She hesitated, then nodded. Very well. She led him into her sitting room, warm, bright, filled with books and flowers. A place that looked alive, entirely her own. Kaelin stood awkwardly near the window. Lyra remained by her table, keeping distance. What did you wish to discuss? She asked calmly. Kaelin struggled for words. He had prepared nothing. He had no script. He only had raw truth clawing inside him. He inhaled slowly. I have been unwell. Lyra's brow furrowed slightly. Are you injured? Do you need a healer? No, he said softly. It is not a wound of the body. Her expression softened just a fraction. Then she caught herself and stood straighter. What troubles you, Your Majesty? He met her eyes. You. Lyra's breath hitched, but she kept her posture steady. Me. Yes, he said, stepping closer. Your absence. She blinked slowly, her hands tightening around the chair she held. Kaelin continued, each word strained but honest. I have not slept. Have not rested. Cannot focus. Castle feels wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. He paused, swallowing hard. You brought life into this place, into me. And now that it's gone, I feel it everywhere. Lyra looked away, her eyes shining with something she quickly hid. Kaelin took another small step forward. I do not expect forgiveness, he said. I do not ask for things to return to how they were. He hesitated. But I need you to know. I was wrong. Lyra's breath trembled. His voice softened to a whisper. You did not suffocate me. She looked up sharply, pain flickering across her face. Kaelin continued. You made me feel alive in ways I did not understand. I mistook that feeling for discomfort. It wasn't. It was fear. Fear of how much space you took in my heart. Lyra's lips parted slightly. He stepped closer. Now only a few feet separated them. Your presence never suffocated me, Lyra, he said. Your absence does. Silence filled the room. Heavy, electric, painful, beautiful. Lyra finally spoke, her voice shaking despite her efforts. You hurt me, Kaelin. Hearing his name from her lips, not your majesty, not my king, but Kaelin, broke something in him. I know, he whispered. And I regret it every hour. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. I changed because I had to, she said quietly. Because staying near you, loving you the way I did, became painful. Kaelin's jaw tightened. Yes, he said softly. I see that now. She opened her eyes, tears glistening. Love shouldn't hurt. Kaelin exhaled shakily. Neither should silence. The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Lyra turned away, wiping her cheek. Why are you telling me this now? She whispered. Because, Kaelin said, stepping to her side. I am afraid. She looked at him, startled. Of losing you forever. Her breath caught. His voice trembled. The voice of a king who had never trembled before. I can command armies, Kaelin said. I can conquer kingdoms. But I cannot command your heart. And I cannot conquer the distance between us. Not without your permission. Lyra stared at him, stunned beyond words. Kaelin placed a hand over his own chest. And this. He inhaled shakily. This hurts more than any blade. Lyra finally whispered. I don't know if I can trust you again. Kaelin closed his eyes. I will earn it, he promised. Silence fell. But this time, it wasn't painful. It was full of something new. Something trembling, fragile, hopeful. Beginning. Or an ending. Only time would tell. The morning after Kaelin confessed his regret, the entire castle hummed with curiosity. Servants whispered. Guards exchanged knowing looks. Council members watched closely. Something had shifted, subtly but undeniably. Kaelin no longer walked through the palace like a cold storm. His steps were slower, his gaze distracted. His composure cracked in a way only a handful of people had ever seen. He had laid his heart bare to Lyra, perhaps too late, perhaps imperfectly, but he had done it. Now came the harder part. Earning trust, earning forgiveness, earning her. Lyra avoided him the next day. Not angrily, not coldly, just carefully. She walked through the gardens at sunrise, accompanied by two maidens. She visited the stables to check on her horse. She spent hours in the Queen's study reviewing treaty documents. Kaelin watched from a distance. He didn't interrupt. He didn't demand her attention. He didn't pull rank. He simply observed her, trying to understand the rhythms of her new life. She laughed with the gardeners, shared bread with the maids, listened to the guards talk about their families. He had always thought she was small, a delicate thing in a world of predators. But she wasn't small at all. She was a sun he had underestimated. And now that he stood outside her orbit, he finally understood how bright she truly was. That afternoon, he approached her in the library, cautiously this time. Lyra. She looked up from her research. Your Majesty. The title still cut him, but her tone was softer today. Not warm, not affectionate, but not distant either. Beginning. I brought this for you, Kaelin said. He held out a scroll bound with a sapphire ribbon. Lyra blinked. What is it? Historical treaties from the northern tribes. You were looking for them last week. Lyra hesitated before taking it from his hand. Thank you, she said quietly. Kaelin nodded and stepped back immediately, giving her space. He didn't linger. He didn't expect her to speak further. He didn't hover the way he used to dislike. He simply left. Lyra stared after him, confused. This was not the man she had once known. This wasn't the king who spoke carelessly or behaved with cold authority. This man was trying. Genuinely. She wasn't sure how she felt about that. Later that evening, Lyra returned to her chambers to find a box placed neatly on her writing desk. A note sat on top, written in Kaelin's elegant handwriting. For your insomnia. Curious, she opened the box. Inside lay a collection of enchanted moon pearls. They glowed softly, warm, calming light that soothed the mind. They were incredibly rare, used only by high-ranking healers for those suffering from anxiety or sleeplessness. Her breath caught. He remembered. She had once mentioned, months ago, that she struggled to sleep without the sound of rain or soft light. She closed her eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. Kaelin. Remembering details. Kaelin, listening. This felt strange. Unsettling. Tender. She turned the note over. Nothing else was written. He had left no plea, no confession, no pressure. Just a gift. Something gentle. Something for her. Over the next few days, Kaelin continued quietly trying. Not forcing. Not demanding. Just offering. Small things. He brought her books she needed for her studies. He arranged the archives so her research became easier. He had her training equipment replaced with high-quality versions. He even ordered additional guards to protect the Queen's wing, not because she asked, but because he realized she deserved it. He never mentioned love. Never pushed for closeness. Never asked for more. He was rebuilding the foundation brick by brick, without touching her walls. And Lyra noticed. She caught herself studying him when he wasn't looking. She saw the exhaustion under his eyes. The way his shoulders dropped when he was alone. The way he softened around her without meaning to. A small part of her, the part she had buried, still cared. But care came with caution now. And caution was all that protected her. One evening, Kaelin approached her in the garden. The sunset cast golden light on the snow, turning the world warm despite the cold. Lyra was reading on a stone bench, wrapped in a thick cloak. Kaelin stopped a respectful distance away. "May I sit?" he asked quietly. Her heart fluttered, a reaction she ignored. "Yes," she said softly. "You may." He sat, maintaining space between them. They were silent for a moment. Peaceful silence. Not forced. Not heavy. Then Kaelin spoke. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "About earning your trust." Lyra closed her book slowly. "I know," she whispered. "But I must ask you something," he said. She looked at him, uncertain. "What is it?" His voice softened with vulnerability she had never heard before. "Will you allow me to try?" Lyra swallowed hard. The wind rustled the leaves. Snowflakes drifted through the air like falling stars. Her heart beat painfully in her chest. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know if I can trust you yet. I understand. But," she continued. Kaelin looked up sharply. "But I won't stop you from trying." Something warm flickered in his eyes, the first spark of hope he'd felt in weeks. Lyra rose to her feet. "Good night, Kaelin." She walked away, leaving the king alone in the garden. But for the first time in a long time, Kaelin didn't feel alone at all. The next week was different. Not dramatic, not explosive, just different. Lyra didn't avoid Kaelin anymore. She didn't seek him out, but she didn't walk away when he came near. She didn't shut him out entirely. She didn't soften fully either. Their interactions became like careful dance steps. She moved a little closer. He stayed gentle. She let him speak. He didn't overstep. She allowed silence. He respected it. It was progress. Fragile. Low. Delicate. But progress. On the 5th day, Lyra joined him in the council chamber. Surprised everyone. For months she had studied politics, diplomacy, and the kingdom's laws. But she had never stepped foot into a real council meeting. When she walked in, nobles murmured in shock. Kaelin rose immediately. "Lady Lyra," he said softly, "I wasn't expecting you." "I know." She sat gracefully beside him. But I thought it was time I begin my duties. He tried to hide the pride in his expression and failed. To the court's astonishment, Lyra contributed valuable insights. She pointed out a flaw in one of the trade proposals. She suggested a diplomatic solution to a border conflict. She recommended restructuring the agricultural tax system. The council members exchanged impressed glances. Kalen watched her speak, his chest swelling. Not with possessiveness, not with guilt, but with admiration. She was brilliant. She had always been brilliant. He had simply never looked close enough to see it. After the meeting, Kalen walked beside her through the corridor. "You were incredible today," he said quietly. Lyra tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you. Your voice carries wisdom," he added. "The council respects you already." She looked at him, a searching, uncertain look. "Do you?" she asked softly. Kalen stopped walking. He answered without hesitation. "With my life." Lyra's breath caught. A small tremor moved across her lips. She looked away quickly. "I have to prepare for tomorrow's session." She walked off faster than necessary. But Kalen saw it. The crack in her walls. The fracture where his words had slipped in. It was small, barely visible, but real. 2 nights later, a snowstorm struck the palace. Fierce winds shook the windows. The temperature dropped so sharply the torches flickered. Kalen paced his chamber restlessly. Lyra hated storms. She once told him they reminded her of nights she spent alone as a child. Winds howling like wolves, shadows moving like monsters. Without thinking twice, he grabbed his cloak and rushed to the queen's wing. He knocked. No answer. Panic flashed through him. He opened the door gently. Lyra was on the floor beside her bed, wrapped in a blanket, trembling. Her eyes were squeezed shut, breath shaky. "Lyra," he whispered, dropping to his knees beside her. Her eyes flew open. "Kalen." She quickly looked away, wiping her face. "I'm fine. I'm fine." "You're not," he said softly. She flinched when thunder cracked outside. Kalen didn't touch her. He didn't pull her close. He didn't assume she wanted him near. He simply asked, "What can I do?" Lyra swallowed hard, her throat tight. "Just sit with me." His chest squeezed painfully. "Of course." He sat beside her, not touching, not crowding, but close enough for his presence to be comforting. Lyra exhaled shakily. Minutes passed. Her breathing softened. Her shoulders relaxed. Her trembling eased. Another thunderclap sounded. This time, Lyra reached out voluntarily, her hand brushing his. Kalen froze. She wasn't clinging. She wasn't panicking. She was choosing him. Slowly, she slid her fingers into his. He wrapped his hand around hers gently, warmth spreading through him. They sat like that in silence. Soft, healing silence. The storm eventually faded. But neither of them moved. Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder. Barely, lightly, carefully. Kalen closed his eyes. For the first time since everything shattered. He felt her heart beating beside his again. Low, quiet, alive. And it was the sweetest sound he had ever heard. When Lyra finally whispered, her voice was barely audible. "Kalen, maybe we can try again." His breath stopped. Slowly he turned to her. "Truly," he whispered. Lyra nodded, eyes glistening. "But slowly," she added. "Gently. Carefully." Kalen lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "Anything you ask," he whispered. "And this time," Lyra murmured, her voice trembling, "don't break what you're trying to keep." "I won't," Kalen vowed. And for once, he meant every word. If you felt every heartbeat of this story, if you felt that tension, that longing, that pain, then trust me, what comes next will shake this entire kingdom. So don't just click away. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and stay with me. Because the next chapter It's where everything they've been running from finally catches up to them.